It's hard to know whether the morning has started or not, but I think we've worked it out. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel. It's 9 o'clock here on this, what day of the week is it? I think it's Wednesday morning. And it's very nice to see you, very nice to have your company. We're going to spend a couple of hours together looking at the news and some various stories, making the headlines, find out what's happening right across the United States of America. If you want to join in, then do the usual thing. If you have an Echo show, you can wake it up, say, and then your message that comes through to me. If you don't, you can go to backchannel.tv. And you can also follow the show on YouTube if you would like to see what it looks like as well. As you know, this is the only place where you can listen to, watch, and chat with live hosts right here on your device. We're going to look at the morning papers as well. Before that, let me just tell you what's coming up. The American patient, believed to be the third person in the world and first woman to be cured of HIV. We'll look at that uplifting news story. Also, continuing to look into banning as St. Louis students sue their district board in federal court for removing books, including The Bluest Eye by Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison. We'll look at the book and ask why some people find it so offensive. P.J. O'Rourke, best-selling American satirist, columnist and political commentator. He's died at the age of 74. We'll look at his life and share some of his best quotes. And it's Black History Month, so we'll be looking at the life of Elizabeth Freeman, who became the first woman to successfully file a lawsuit for her right to freedom in the state of Massachusetts. A groundbreaking moment in U.S. legal history. But first, we're going to take a look at today's newspapers. And let's welcome Marley has joined us, and Jessica has joined us as well. Nice to see you. Let's jump straight in with the Sun Herald this morning. Diamond Head councilman accused in child sex assault. It says a Diamond Head councilman and son of a state senator is out of jail on bond in Hancock County after his arrest on misdemeanor charges of simple assault, resulting in bodily injury and contributing to the delinquency of a child, records say. Hancock County Sheriff's deputies arrested Alan J. Moran on Valentine's Day. What a romantic thing. Not. What a tragedy. Also on the front of the Sun Herald, Putin claims partial pullback. NATO wants more proof, is the headline. Yes, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday how he welcomed a security dialogue with the West as his military reported pulling back some of his troops near Ukraine. Do you know, I think this could turn out okay. I just have a little feeling now, a glimmer of hope that he's ramping it all up. He's put in 148,000 troops now are there at the Ukraine border, Russian troops. I have a feeling that this is all posturing. This is what Putin enjoys. Like he takes pleasure from manipulating people. He's literally having a laugh. It's a little bit like when Saddam Hussein said he had weapons of mass destruction. Do you remember? And he never did. Right? Same thing. It's like this kind of strongman thing where you don't actually need to have any facts, any ammunition, anything. It's all about putting on a front, putting on a show. He almost is goading us to start a war. Right? I have a feeling that this is going to be okay. I just feel like I trust the NATO negotiators. I just have a good feeling about it now. First time in weeks that I felt a sense of oh, hang on a second, this could be okay. Yesterday, the opposite. When Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, told Ukrainians that today, Wednesday, they should sing the national anthem and wave flags, that worried me. I was like, okay, he knows there's going to be a war. But he's a stand-up comedian, so, he was just falling back on his entertainment experience. Putin said he doesn't want war and would rely on negotiations as he presses his demand for the West to halt Ukraine's bid to join NATO. At the same time, he didn't commit to a full pullback of troops, saying Russia's next moves in the standoff will depend on how the situation evolves. Okay, interesting. I'll be honest with you, just to kind of clear this up, Putin also needs to have control over his own people, right? And so by putting 148,000 troops on the front line, he's effectively telling Russians, his own people back home, as well as the 148,000 Russian troops, that he's in charge. So this isn't just posturing to the enemy. This is also posturing the strongman, posturing to his own people. Do you see what I mean? It's like he likes to take control. Patel has joined us. Welcome. And Marley says, my name is Molly in Marley when I put it in. Oh, I see. It comes up as Molly, but your name's Marley. I understand. And Michael, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. Lovely to know everybody's part of the show. Okay, let's see what else we have happening here. Yeah, is anyone else optimistic about the potential Ukraine? Anyone? Just me. Probably just me, but let me know. A new bill at MS legislature would change divorce laws in state. It says a Mississippi Senate bill would add an irrevocably broken marriage as grounds for a divorce. This is the latest in an age-old, usually fruitless effort to bring Mississippi's antiquated misogynistic divorce laws into the 20th century. Yeah, that's right, 20th century, not 21st century, 20th century. A chairman, Bryce Wiggins, has authorized Senate Bill 2643, which passed the Senate with a vote of 35 to 13, with 4 politically courageous souls voting present. Wiggins authored the bill based on recommendations of a task force of judges, lawyers, and other experts reviewing the state's domestic laws. The task force's reasons are compelling, Wiggins told colleagues. It's the destruction caused to children and families caused by Mississippi's restrictive divorce laws being weaponized. And this would be a step closer to a unilateral no-fault divorce like most of the rest of the world has. Mississippi has and South Dakota remain the only 2 states without a unilateral no-fault divorce ground. Mississippi's divorce ground of irreconcilable differences requires mutual consent of spouses, and this frequently makes getting a divorce in Mississippi difficult and expensive. I mean, it's so frustrating because it's just nobody's business other than the 2 people involved. This is why it's so frustrating. It's like it's nobody's business. I don't know. I don't really know how to react to that. I just feel like, you know, this is the problem with having a country that is as big as this, that is controlled locally by the 50 individual states, is that you're always going to feel aggrieved if you're living in a state where local laws are antiquated compared to other states. You'll just feel aggrieved. Stacey, welcome. Marley has to leave real quick, but he'll be right back. Marley, I'll hold my breath. Yeah, Marley's better because Marley's better than Molly because Marley reminds me of the character in A Christmas Carol. Do you remember? There's a character in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol called Marley, and it's such a wonderful character. And so that's why I have Molly. To me is like a kind of, you know, it's like a class A drug. But okay, well, Molly, you tell me whatever you want to be called. You just let me know, and I'll call you that. Molly is I don't think I've ever known anyone called Molly. It's a wonderfully old-fashioned name. It kind of conjures up the 1950s, you know, whereas Marley conjures up 1812. Yeah, if you have an elderly relative, Carla's just telling me, she's the producer, that she had an aunt called Molly, and she always I think maybe she dressed up to her name, you know. She wanted to wear the nail varnish and the brightly coloured leggings because it suited her name. I never knew if I suited my name, really. I think I should have been called something else. Barry, maybe. I'd have made a good Barry. Let's go to the Greenwood Commonwealth now. The Greenwood City Council will not consider opting out of making medical marijuana available in the city, says Council President Ronnie Stevenson. The council discussed the law at its Tuesday meeting. No members objected to Stevenson's statement. City Attorney Don Brock said the law is detailed and requires due diligence. Also, board hopes to slow... Yes? Oh, Stacey's... Yeah, well... Tony's an option. Hello, Tony. Are you ready for the lunch hour with me? Says Stacey. That's my new name. Tony. I don't know. To me, Tony sounds like a mechanic. You know? Tony's a mechanic. I can just about put screen wash in my car. Look at these hands. Not everyone needs a mechanic. That's an old phrase. You get yourself an electric car, you don't need a mechanic. You don't need a mechanic. I'm telling you, this is what people need to understand. You get an electric car, you don't need a mechanic. Book helps kids prepare for disasters. This is a Greenwood pastor has written and published a book to help prepare children for natural disasters. Facing the Storm, written by Shalanda Bird, pastor of Rock and Salvation Church in Brentwood Avenue, was released earlier this year. She said, we have a generation now of youth who are worried if they'll even have a future with COVID and violence and just so much that's present within society today. Her book, which includes artwork by her nephew, tells the story of one family dealing with flash flooding and teaches young readers how to prepare themselves. That's fascinating, isn't it? That you're having to turn to literature to deal with natural disasters. That's the world that we're living in now. It's a little bit like my... Yes? I was going to say it's a little bit like my daughter, like explaining how she has to do these intruder drills at school and fire drills and stuff. You know, it's like every eventuality, like constantly risk assessing. Bird said she began writing the book last year following Hurricane Ida. She was at the Hayes Homes complex last August on the eve of the hurricane, helping her daughter move in. When she saw a group of children playing, Bird said she beckoned the children over and told them what to do if the storm caused flash flooding or other hazards. She said they responded well to her advice, and one girl asked afterwards whether Bird had anything to give them. Bird gave them bottled water. They were so appreciative when I began to share it with them, the things that they needed in order to survive, Bird said. The next time I come back, I'm going to make sure I have something to put in those kids' hands. Preparing children for disaster is particularly important because of the threat of flash flooding in the county, Bird said. She recalled the flooding that occurred last June, including the Glendale subdivision where she lives. Yeah, I mean, I do earthquake training with my children at home. So we do like a practice. So I shout earthquake and we all run into the lower bunk because they have bunk beds. We run into the lower bunk and we just get under the lower bunk. That's how, because it's up against a wall and there's nothing to fall. Because earthquakes really, you only get really hurt by stuff that falls or breaking glass. The actual earthquake itself, it's not like in the movies where the ground opens up and everybody falls in. It's not really like that. I mean, I'm sure it will be somewhere at the epicenter maybe, but not anywhere else. So really, it's just stuff falling. So we get under the bunk, bottom bunk. Carla, why did you have to climb out of a window? What was the emergency? Oh, a fire, yes, for a fire. Well, with a fire, you're supposed to close the windows, leave, close the door. That's what happened in New York recently. The fire started in the apartment block, low down, and they didn't shut the door. So they left the apartment, they ran out, saved themselves, but by not shutting the front door, it caused the smoke to go up the stairwell, and it prevented everybody upstairs from getting out. Shut the windows, shut the doors, leave, make sure everything's closed. That's how you do it. You contain the fire. You don't allow the fire to spread. I mean, I agree. I think we should have more kind of government information films. Do you remember those? I don't know if you remember the 1950s. But in my childhood, in the 70s and 80s, it was government information films about crossing the road, about protecting yourself from the local pervert. I mean, it was all on television. PSAs, yeah, we called them PIFs, I guess, public information film. I think so. Anyway, it was just to educate people. And it was a leftover from the war. That's kind of how it happened. The war used to put these information out all the time to update people of what was happening during the Second World War. And public information films started to kind of educate people on how to get back to normal life, about what they could and couldn't do with rations and with, use of water or use of utilities. And then in England, in the 1970s, we had a thing called the 3-day week where the coal miners went on strike. So you weren't allowed to use any electricity. They turned it off. So there'd be public information films telling you about what was happening. Okay, ecological trends may boost cotton processing business, it says. When Lawson Gary and his father Tommy began more than a decade ago inventing a process that produced cotton fiber suitable for disposable diapers and other throwaway hygiene products, they didn't realize they were about to capitalize on an ecological movement. But with the European Union cracking down on plastics and the United States and Canada moving in that direction as well, the Leflore County family, with a long farming tradition, could see its cotton processing business take off. That's interesting, isn't it? So they have an unbleached cotton fiber that they produce in a plant in Money, and it's used in an assortment of diapers, feminine hygiene products, and other personal care items. Can you imagine that, like coming across a product that you have no idea is going to become essential in the future? They're probably doing okay. They're doing okay. Stacey said we have fire drills in our school. Molly says, no offense, but word learning about what Anthony is teaching of. Who's Tony? He says. Okay. You might have to give that to me again. Crystal, hi. Thank you for joining us. Wonderful. Nice to know that you're part of the show. If you want to join in, you know where we are. You just go to backchannel.tv and you can message me from there as well. Okay, now we're going to jump to Mississippi and to the Hattiesburg American and a photograph of Representative Hester Jackson McCrae, the Democratic representative for Horn Lake. She asks a question regarding proposed changes in new voter initiative legislation in the Mississippi state capital in Jackson. Teacher pay initiative still alive mid-session, it says. Yes. Mississippi legislators are halfway through their 3-month session. And here are some of the issues that they're still considering. Teacher salaries. The House and Senate have passed separate plans to increase some of the lowest teacher salaries in the nation. The House plan will give raises of $4,000 to $6,000. That's good. Race and Education. Bill 2113 would prohibit schools, community colleges, and universities from teaching that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. Black senators walked out in protest before the Senate passed the bill because of concerns that the proposal would limit teaching about racism. The bill has been sent to the House Education Committee. Yeah, I mean, this is what they're trying to do, and it's like, by doing this is just racism, right? But it's dressed up as something. It's dressed up as education. Yeah, but my point is, it's the school. The people that put this bill through are the ones who are putting through a racist policy, right? The people who run the school putting through a racist policy, because they're trying to dress it up like it's a non-racist policy by saying everybody is equal. And the black senators walked out because they were like, nah, I don't think everybody is equal. And if you do that whole everybody is equal argument, which is a very low bar anti-racism argument, doesn't make any sense, because you have to take the history of black Americans into account. White Americans and black Americans are not equal because one group used to own the other group. bought and sold them. So the history and the heritage has to be part of the education system. It has to. And yet, these teachers and these school boards, they just want to whitewash the history. And I feel like when they say, there's no difference, what they're doing there is they're rewriting history for a new generation. Now, there will be an argument from some people to say, well, why not? If we want to stamp out racism, then why not just teach that everybody is equal from this point onwards? And then anybody who's educated from this point onwards will just be less prejudice. House Concurrent Resolution 39 would revive a form of initiative process by allowing people to collect signatures on petitions to put proposed state laws on the ballot. The state's old initiative process allowed people to collect signatures but put proposed state constitutional amendments on the ballot. Okay. On equal pay, it says House Bill 770 and Senate Bill 2451 would put Mississippi employers to pay women and men the same amount of money for the same work. A 1963 federal law requires equal pay for equal law, but Mississippi is the only state without its own equal pay law. I mean, Mississippi is still in 1963, isn't it? Effectively. And when you see stuff like this and you read stuff like this, you're just like, seriously? And this is what I was saying about being in different states and feeling like you've had a poor deal. You've had a poor deal because another state has it different. And then you have to ask, well, why don't people just move? Why don't people move? And this is what I think is going to happen, which is that as people see their states become more extreme, if you're living in Florida or Arizona or Texas and you feel that your state is becoming more extreme, as in right wing, and you do not feel that way, as most Americans don't. 60% of Americans don't feel like that. Unless you are able to change that with the vote, there's a good chance you'll probably move states. And I think we're going to see this migration, around the place. But we'll look at the Florida newspapers in just a moment, and we'll discuss that in more detail. Watt just joined us from Nate. Welcome. Nice to see you. We have Molly and Crystal is with us as well. Molly, still there. Justin, 3, Stacy, Patel, Michael, Jessica. Welcome, all of you. Okay, what else is on the front here? Campus bomb threats remind students of past anti-black violence. So here you go, same newspaper. Same newspaper in one breath. This is a Hattiesburg American. One breath, it's saying that they want to whitewash the teaching of race. And then the same newspaper, campus bomb threats remind students of past anti-black violence. It says on the first day of Black History Month, Nyla Tolliver's schedule at Xavier University included 3 classes followed by dance team practice in the afternoon. Her day was upended before it began. She woke up February 1st to an email alert saying the school had received a bomb threat earlier in the day. A bomb wasn't found on campus, but the threat led to a reshuffling of classes. Disappointed but not surprised, Tolliver instead spent the first day of February lamenting history, repeating itself. It was like, wow, of course this is happening again. It's on the start of Black History Month. Us knowing about history, we knew it wasn't coincidental. Xavier in Louisiana was one of more than a dozen historically black colleges and universities nationwide to receive a bomb threat on February 1st. FBI investigators have identified a handful of possible suspects, juveniles scattered across the country, who have raised serious concerns among authorities. A person familiar with the matter, who is not authorized to comment, publicly told USA Today. The threats, it says, the FBI said, are being investigated as hate crimes and racially motivated violent extremism. It's one of the cases a caller claims to be affiliated with neo-Nazi group Daytona Beach Police. I mean, what are we dealing with here? we're dealing with, and I do genuinely put Donald Trump at the kind of the linchpin of the step shift, where he was so overtly racist that all of the racists who were kind of learning to keep it quiet, learning to kind of think a little more openly, suddenly thought, oh, hang on a second, well, if he's being racist, then I can be racist, because he's the president, and if it's okay for him to do it, then I can too. And so this hatred, day 4 of Trump's presidency, he banned all Muslims entering the United States for no reason. What is that? It's just racism. So from day 4, people were like, well, you know, he's doing it. And then, of course, builds a wall to prevent Mexicans from entering the United States. It's a racist war. And separating children from their parents at the southern border. All of these things, this rhetoric referring to the coronavirus as the Kung flu or the China virus, blaming the Chinese for a natural occurring event. This is all racism, let alone the way he referred to African Americans. Oh, bye, Molly. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day at school. Appreciate you. So this is partly why the timing of hate crimes increasing fell perfectly with 2017. As 2017 came upon, hate crimes went up and up and up and up and up. And by a hate crime, that could be abuse in the street to violent physical assault. There's a photograph of the Reverend John Cross pointing to the wreckage of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama on the 19th of September 1963 after the bombing attack. A recent bomb threat against Xavier University, he said, reminded me of that because those people were just going to church and they couldn't even do that in peace, said Nyla Tolliver, freshman at the university. Yeah, I mean, I watched this documentary, which I think I recommended to you a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember? It's on the Nat Geo, I think. And it was about the march to Washington recently. And it looked back on all of these civil rights marches and protests. And of course, it referred to the 16th Street Baptist Church in Alabama. And it showed the video of children being removed from the church on stretchers who had died in the explosion. So, yeah, it's not the time to forget. Okay, let's move on to, should we stay? Oh, let's go to Missouri next. Let's go to Missouri. And the News Tribune. They lead with Republican lawmakers advocate rally for 7-1 map. The battle over congressional maps spilled on Tuesday onto the first floor of the Capitol, as dozens rallied in favor of a 7-1 map favoring Republicans. Congressional maps fall to the legislature to draw after 6-2 versions similar to current districts passed the House and made it to the Senate for debate. The upper chamber remained deadlocked all last week with continuous filibusters, as most of the chamber's conservative caucus stood in favor of a 7-1 map. Senate leadership tabled the conversation late last week after several attempted compromises failed to pass. Oh, Callie's joined us. It might be Kaylee. Welcome. Thank you for joining Backchannel. I'm Anthony. We're just looking through the morning papers. We're currently on the News Tribune for Jefferson City, Missouri. Lawmakers took to the stage in the early afternoon to discuss the fight for a conservative map, raising concerns a 6-2 map could allow Democrats to add an additional blue seat in Congress due to the way its boundaries were drawn. I mean, can we just take a big picture view of this for a second? It is ridiculous that there is even this process. Like, why is this process even here? Like, you don't need it. You could remove this entire process out. This is politics. It's just politics. It has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing to do with representation. It has nothing to do with the people. It has nothing to do with anything. It is fundamentally to do with racism. The history of these maps is to do with racism. It's to do with segregation. Read into the history of boundary line drawing of boundary lines in American states, and see how it was all to do with race. It was only ever to do with race. And here, once again, in Missouri, the struggle for kind of equal justice in race continues. Do you know, yesterday there was in Congress, there was the congressman needed a quorum in order to pass the appointment of a new financial position. And it was all ready to go, but they needed all the Republicans to be there as well. Not a solitary Republican showed up to sign off on this new public servant coming in to help with the economy and with interest rates and inflation and all of the issues that we have facing us. And they'd found this really good candidate, and they needed, and this is what they do. They have to sign off on these people. Not a single solitary Republican. And there was a photograph published of the room, the ornate room where this was happening. And all it was, down one side of the table, was empty chairs. And that is what we have now. We have a Republican Party that care not for the country or for the situation the country faces or the economic problems of the people. It cares only for themselves and for politics and wanting themselves to do as much damage to this administration as possible. That's what you're dealing with. And it's demonstrated when you see empty chairs at this huge table. There was like 40 people missing. Not a single one showed up. It's a little bit like not a solitary Republican voted to approve the Voting Rights Act. Not one. So my point is that if one or two did, then you could say, okay, well, people are thinking, individually, but they're not. This is clearly, these people are being whipped in this way. This is a protest. This is a Republican protest against the current administration. And this is why the country will fall. This is why the country will fall. And they want it to happen because then they can say that under Joe Biden, the country collapsed and only Donald Trump can save it. That's what all this is about. It's sabotage. Now, in the meantime, it's fine for them because they're wealthy. But if you're a regular person making a regular wage, then, of course, you are going to have to pay the price for this and bear the brunt of this. And that is what we're facing every day. It is sabotage by the Republican Party. They don't want the country to work. They want the country to fall, to fail, to crash and burn. And what is a country? A country is people. It's not buildings or infrastructure. A country is people. Citizens, civilians, not politicians. So my prediction is this country will fall at some point within, the next 2 years. Unless some miracle happens. I'm looking forward to the miracle. We need it. Missouri GOP continues to fight to limit access to Medicaid. I mean, I don't even need to explain this, do I? I'll just read it to you, because this is just doubling down on what I've just said. It says Missouri's GOP-led House on Tuesday advanced a proposal to allow lawmakers to defund Medicaid expansion, which would effectively undo voters' recent decision to increase access to the government's healthcare program. It says the measure, which received initial House approval and a voice vote, would give lawmakers the power to stop paying for healthcare coverage for patients recently added to the program. It says that could be very important in future years when and if potentially Medicaid becomes prohibitively expensive, that it continues to encroach on other priorities in our state budget, House Budget Chairman Cody Smith said during a House floor debate. If approved by the full legislature, the proposed constitutional amendment would go before voters. Missouri Republicans for years have resisted attempts to expand Medicaid under the terms of the 2010 federal health care law signed by former President Barack Obama. So advocates in Missouri bypassed the legislature, and in 2020 they went directly to voters who approved a constitutional amendment expanding access to the program with 53% of the vote. Previously, Missouri's health care program did not cover most adults without children, and its income eligibility threshold for parents was one of the lowest in the nation, about 1/5 of the poverty level. So there we are. That's basically another example of how in Missouri you're going to struggle. You know, it doesn't benefit anyone. Oh, Tamara joined us. Hi, Tamara. I thought you were going to show up on Thursday, which would have been tomorrow. Animals joined us. Kaylee as well. Austin, Watt, Crystal. Molly had to go. Stacey is still with us for now. Patel, thank you for hanging out this morning. What else do we have? Career fair fines. This is a Truman State University representative encouraging students to consider Truman to further their education. Oh, that's nice. I do like these kind of career fairs and school fairs and university fairs. They're very interesting. And trade and technical schools are key to workforce development. Apparently, they're going to be vital to workforce development in the future, the Governor Mike Parson told higher education leaders on Monday. State Technical College of Missouri was Parson's latest stop in a series of roundtable discussions with higher education and workforce development leaders around the state. So there we go. That's the News Tribune this morning. Let's move on to the News Leader. We're staying in Missouri right now. Let's see what they have to say. They lead with, as cases rapidly fall, city moves past Omicron surge. Well, this is good news. Isn't it interesting how the virus hasn't really been talked about in the media so much now? Does that mean that it disappeared, or does that mean just the media's not talking about it? Amid a sharp decline in COVID cases, Springfield's Omicron surge appears to be waning, according to the Springfield Greene County Health Department. Due to the highly transmissible Omicron variant, daily COVID cases in Greene County peaked in mid-January with more than 1,000 cases in a single day, and a weekly average of 771 per day, the highest seen in the Ozarks since the beginning of the pandemic. But following the trend of the other parts of the globe recovering from the Omicron, coronavirus cases have fallen dramatically in February. As of last week, the weekly average of cases had fallen to 200 a day. Well, that's good to know. Also, a David and Goliath case, it says. Trial begins in Cox Health Suite sparked by COVID promo code. Interesting. Oh, hi, Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer. Nice to see you. And Kenneth has joined us as well. Kenneth's in Ohio and is brand new, first time with Backchannel. Welcome, Kenneth. Jennifer, you've been here before, but it's wonderful to know that you're part of the show. Arguments began on Monday in a Greene County lawsuit pitting an Ozark real estate agent and single parent against Springfield-based Cox Health and its CEO, Steve Edwards. It's a convoluted court battle centered on dueling social media postings, sparked by the use of the word COVID as a promotional code to access free telehealth visits. Wow, this is interesting. Samantha Cherry in August 2020 took to Facebook to vent, in her words, after she was dissatisfied with the requirement from Cox's virtual visit service that the word COVID be used as a promotional code. As the news leader reported last year. COVID warning, Cherry wrote at the beginning of a detailed Facebook post, decorated with 7 emoji symbols representing feelings of anger and concern. Shortly afterward, Edward responded on Twitter when he wrote on the 2nd of August, in March, Cox decided to provide free telehealth medicine to address the uninsured and reduce exposure risk. In the software, a coupon code had to be chosen. Instead of insurance field, COVID. It was public service. I regret anyone would think it was part of a conspiracy theory. So Edwards also screenshotted an early version of Cherry's Facebook post without redacting Cherry's name or that her underage child, for whom she sought the virtual visit. He then posted his words and Cherry's for his 13,000 Twitter followers, along with anyone else on the internet who might attempt to access his publicly available account on the global platform. She's suing him. I mean, I don't know. And here's a good one. SPS to become 4th Missouri district with own police department. This is very interesting. Very interesting. Because the smaller the police department, the more crime the police can commit. It says the police force in Springfield Public Schools. Incidentally, in England, where I'm from, we don't call them police forces anymore. We have to call them police service. The police service. A force would suggest that you are enforcing some kind of authoritarianism. So we refer to them as the police service. I thought I'd drop that in there. The police force in Springfield Public Schools want to take a rare step that will give more autonomy to hiring and training officers. Under the proposed change, noteworthy for how uncommon it is in Missouri, SPS will have its own police department. It's not overly popular in Missouri at this time, said Jim Farrell, chief of police for the district, but it's a normal and regular occurrence in California, Texas, a lot of places. In Florida are doing it as well. They said in the mid-2000s, a state law change prompted by the Blue Springs district opened the door for districts to create their own police departments. Springfield, the largest district in Missouri, will be the fourth in the state to take the step, following Blue Springs, Dunklin, and Willard. For years, SPS police officers have been commissioned through the Greene County Sheriff's Office. Farrell and the relationship between the district and the Sheriff's Office, where he used to work, has remained friendly and cooperative over the years. However, the way it was set up creates extra work for both entities. I mean, look, here's what's interesting about this. The cost of policing is massive, right? It's massive. How do you bring the cost of policing down? You do things on a national level, right? Or on a multi-state level. So uniforms, communications equipment, processes, software, computer systems, vehicles, leasing of vehicles. All of this can be done on a larger scale. And the larger the scale, the cheaper the individual item, right? So you find a police uniform, you have the same uniform across multiple states, and then you're going to be able to requisition uniforms at a more affordable cost. Same with software, same with everything else. And the point is that and also the other thing about doing policing on a grander scale is that you can have rules across the board for safety and training and security and respect and critical race theory, for example, something that certainly should be taught to police officers. And so, and maybe if you're part of the show today and you are a police officer, or maybe you have family who are police officer, or maybe it's an industry that you are interested in going into yourself, maybe you could join in and let me know. I don't really have any connections with the police other than my best friend is a police officer. He was fast-tracked in England because he looked a little bit Chinese. He's not Chinese at all. He has absolutely no Asian heritage whatsoever. But because he looked a bit Chinese, they thought that he was an ethnic minority, and he got fast-tracked. Isn't that brilliant? It's just like really? Got through the police service really quickly. So now he's a CID officer, which is an investigator. He's like a what do you call that? Someone who's an investigator. An investigator, I guess. What does the D stand for? Detective, isn't it? Criminal investigating detective. He's a detective. Detective is the word I was trying to think of. Anyway, so my opinion is that the smaller these police forces are, the less scrutiny they will have. Do you see what I mean? It's like you end up policing by, instinct. And unfortunately, a lot of people that are drawn into the police departments themselves are... Some of them go into it for the wrong reasons. They go into it because they are authoritative naturally. They have authoritarian tendencies, and they want a way to kind of to really channel their authoritarianism. I mean, look at Derek Chauvin, who executed George Floyd. As a person, the kind of person you would need to be to do that. And this happens a lot when they investigate police officers. They find out they're members of far-right organizations. It's been analyzed. They just did it in the military. They found out that nearly 10% of people in the military are members of far-right organizations. People that want to carry guns and shoot guns for a living. They gravitate towards this. It's a little bit why pedophiles gravitate towards the church or gravitate towards teaching. Because they're going to have access to children and be trusted. So I really believe that we need to... I mean, it's harder in America, obviously, because it's such a huge country. But what are the advantages of very localized policing? Very localized policing. Well, maybe there are advantages in terms of the community. But in terms of accountability, I think there's less. It's just my opinion. I'm sure you have an opinion. And yours is just as welcome as well. Stacey says if you don't have all that, you're going to have a world of trouble and disciplinarians. Yeah. And did you know that, Carla, this is interesting. Did you know that there is no national standard training for police officers across the United States? So every police force is trained completely differently. There's no national standard for police training. And if you were an investigator, or indeed a detective, and you wanted to go looking for the root cause of a lot of the problems in policing, take my advice. Go look at the people who train police officers. Go look at the people who train in offensive policing or defensive policing or having these skills. A lot of I've read a lot about this. Some of these people are very suspect, and there's no national standard for it. I just think anybody who wears a uniform, it has the potential to take advantage of their position. That's the problem. It's people in uniform. And I'm referring to even security guards, the people that are drawn to do security. Invariably, they're people who would love to have a fight, but they can't do it legally. So by wearing a security guard's uniform, you've got more chance of being able to have a fight and get away with it. You even see it at the airport. If you're traveling through American airports, the people that wear uniforms who work for the airports, the FAA or even the security services in the airports, they're very authoritarian. It's not necessary. You really don't need to be like that. But the uniform gives humans a level of confidence that you wouldn't see in everyday life. Have you ever had a job where there's a uniform involved and you put it on and suddenly, where you have like epaulets or something and it changes you? I mean, I used to have a pilot shirt because I was a pilot briefly and I had a, little epaulet situation going on and it changed me. I felt different. Felt like I was in charge. I was like, come with me, everything's going to be fine. Yeah, this is why it's important to get dressed when you're working from home. Maybe I'll have dinner tonight at home and wear a full tuxedo. White tie, tailcoat. I have all this garb. I should wear it. I don't know why I don't. Molly just came back. Are you, watching us under the table at school? Hope not. Okay, let's go to Montana next and the Independent Record. They lead with vaccine mandate takes effect. States' health facilities reporting compliance with some leaving jobs. It says hospitals, nursing homes and all other Medicaid accepting facilities have been busy processing data on staff vaccination exemptions and in some cases unemployment. February 14 marked the first deadline for the CDC to COVID-19 vaccine mandate. All employees working at facility receiving a reimbursement from the federal agency are required to provide proof of at least one dose of vaccine or a medical or religious exemption. At a Benefice health system in Great Falls, 37 employees opted to end their employment rather than get vaccinated or try for an exemption. Do you know something? Here comes the rant. I don't understand how people who work in healthcare, who are trained in healthcare, who have knowledge of the mRNA vaccine, right? Who hopefully have a better understanding of how the spike protein operates because they have some basic medical training, so they would have more interest. They understand, they can look at the 9 billion people that have been vaccinated, why they still refuse to get vaccinated. It's because people have been brainwashed. And brainwashing, as my PhD friend Stephen Hassan says, brainwashing is subject to anybody with vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities. We can all be accessed by the brainwashers. And you know, the biggest anti-vax guy is Robert, I was saying Robert Downey Jr., but it's not him. It's Robert Kennedy Jr. And he, Robert Downey Jr., and Robert Kennedy Jr. obviously is the son of Bobby Kennedy, and so he has this kind of Democrat family history, and so people, and I've heard this from secondhand, people have said, "Oh well, have you heard what Robert Kennedy Jr. is saying?" Because of course he's a Democrat, and he's saying that the vaccine is bad. And, you know, you only have to do a tiny little bit of research to see that this guy is a total conspiracy theorist. Like, he is nuts. And just because he has this family heritage doesn't exempt him from insanity. And he wrote a book, and a load of people bought it. And, of course, he has channels. He's been banned from YouTube and banned from Twitter now. But the guy is nuts. But he has caused the majority, they studied it recently, and they showed that actually most of these conspiracy theories that are preventing people from getting vaccinated, including healthcare professionals, most of it has come from 7 sources. Just 7 sources around the world has caused this huge brainwashing movement. And it's fascinating to me. You know, we really are very vulnerable as a race. We are very easily swayed. And propaganda has been used for hundreds of years to try and remap people's minds. And it's no different now. And in fact, it's being done right now. It's being done on the people of Ukraine by the Russians. Right now, they're being told a different story through social media that is being handled by the Russians. There is a constant operation in place to remap people's belief systems. And this is why the authorities screwed up the messaging when it came to COVID so badly, because they didn't realize that there was going to be so much intervention from the likes of the anti-vax movement or conspiracy theorists. And now the only people that won't get vaccinated are people that are either immunocompromised or people who are subject to brainwashing. There's the only people left. Everyone else has been done. The great brainwashed. Maybe that's what we should refer to people as now. The great brainwashed. Oh, I came up with another new phrase yesterday. I haven't actually said it out loud, but I just thought of it. This is for people that don't have a Netflix account. You say to people, come over and we'll Hulu and chill. Do you get it? Oh, you don't have Hulu in England. Hulu is like the other streaming service. Because I'm an idiot. How do you chill and watch a streaming service if you don't have Netflix? What's the phrase? You need to have a new phrase. It needs to be generic. It needs to be streaming and chill. The moment you say Netflix, and if you don't have access, then, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to sit there like a lemon all night with no TV on. I actually have my sister's password. I have shared my Disney Plus, and she has shared her Netflix. Because we're a family. That's how we work. I spoke to my sister yesterday. She's on her way back to Los Angeles. She moved here in December. And so I have a brother and a sister now in Los Angeles. She'll be here at the end of the month. But she's wonderful, superbly talented person, and I really adore her. And I was telling her that. I was becoming very moved. It's very important to tell people, if you really love someone, like, it's really important to tell them. Especially now with the world burning. You know, it's like, it's essential. I even messaged my business partner about this the other day, and he wrote back and told me he loved me. It was a little bit weird, but I was very grateful for it. This is what we do. Let's have a listen to the Volley News update now. This is the latest news across the United States. It's a podcast that I do, and you're welcome to download it wherever you get your podcasts. Anyway, here it is. It's Wednesday, February 16. From the Volley Network, this is your daily U.S. news update. I'm Anthony Davis. The U.S. Congressional Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol on Tuesday had issued subpoenas to 6 people who had knowledge of or participated in efforts to send false alternate electors to Washington for former President Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. The committee said it issued subpoenas seeking documents and testimony to Michael Roman and Gary Michael Brown, who served as director and deputy director respectively for Trump's re-election campaign. It also issued them to 4 officials in states carried by Joe Biden as he defeated Republican Trump's bid for re-election. The Biden administration is seeking $30 billion in additional funds from Congress to fight the COVID-19 pandemic to bolster vaccines, treatments, testing supply and research, according to sources familiar with the matter. The $30 billion request includes $17.9 billion for vaccines and therapeutics. Administration officials and congressional staff have been in talks about the issue. Democratic President Joe Biden secured a $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan last year to help fight the pandemic. But the Delta and Omicron variants of the coronavirus, coupled with ongoing vaccine hesitancy among a portion of the U.S. population, have fueled coronavirus cases, hospitalizations and deaths nationwide. Another estimated $3 billion is proposed for reimbursing providers for testing, treatment and vaccination of the uninsured and vaccination of the underinsured. $3.7 billion would go to developing vaccines that would protect against future variants, and $500 million would be aimed at programs for tracking diseases. Your daily news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the US News Update. It's a podcast you can get wherever you download yours. So just be my guest. Go ahead, make it happen. Do the thing. Press download or subscribe or whatever you need. I'm Anthony Davis. This is the Anthony Davis Show. We are live this morning on Backchannel, and Backchannel is the only place where you can interact with hosts live on your device. If you have an Echo Show, that's where you get all the features. You just wake it up, say, and then your message. You can also message me via backchannel.tv. It's a website. Just go there, backchannel.tv, and that's where you can send me a text. And we're also on YouTube. You can comment there and watch and take part, and everything that you love. Everything that you love, all in one wonderful place. We're looking through the morning papers right now. We're joined by Molly and Jennifer and Kenneth and Tamara and Kaylee, Austin and Watt and Crystal and Three and Justin and Patel and Jessica and Stacy, and thank you, all of you, for having, spending time with us as we Hulu and chill together. Sorry. Carla's here as well. She's producing the show from England. She's right there. I can see her. You can't, but I can. She's right there, looking at me like this. Why you? Half the time I look up and she looks like this. She just has her head in her hands. Anyway. Where did we get to? I think we went to Montana. Let's go to Ohio next, because I was in Ohio recently, and it's a very good place. This is for Dayton. I was in Cleveland, but this is for Dayton. Schools add staff to address learning loss. Huber Heights, Dayton say smaller groups can better address issues. Well, yes, it's the opposite to the police service, isn't it? The smaller groups in schools are better. More teachers, smaller groups. And then each child gets more attention. That's how it works. Some local school districts are using federal funds to pay for extra teachers and tutors in lower grades to help students with learning loss they experienced during online classes during the pandemic. A Dayton Daily News examination of how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting school education in the Dayton region found use of additional staffing is helping districts get students up to speed in areas where they saw learning lost. Huber Heights schools hired 30 additional tutors for their 6 elementary schools, and Dayton Public Schools hired 96 additional teachers for grades 1, 2, and 3 for teaching in reading and math. Mad River hired 5 literacy support students, 1 per elementary building. That's very good, isn't it? Interesting. So I really feel like, this is, the problem is there is a teacher shortage, right? So it's all very well saying we're going to hire, but there's a teacher shortage. So eventually they're going to get stuck if more schools hire more students. Yeah, it is the most important job in the world. It's like, I said this on the show the other day, you never forget the names of your teachers from childhood. You'll meet a million people in your life. Your teachers will always be there, lodged in your brain. I was in love with one of my teachers at school. I used to steal my mum's jewellery and give it to my teacher, wrap it up and give it to my teacher because I loved her so much. Is her name Mrs. Flatty? Oh, Fladding. Miss Fladding. Carla's teacher was Miss Fladding. She was Polish-American. But isn't it interesting how some teachers are so connective? So other teachers just don't get it, like they're in the wrong profession. They'll just talk at the front of the class and you'll just be like, ugh, kill me now. And yet other teachers, you literally hang off their every word. And if you're a teacher and you have that skill, teach. They say that in life, your life is in 3 chapters, right? First life, you learn. You go through life, you learn. Second, you work. Second section of your life, work. And third section of your life, you teach. Teach. So even if you've had a career doing something else, third section of your life, go into teaching. Well, I used to teach. I used to teach every Sunday. I used to teach broadcast journalism every Sunday. And I loved teaching. And I must have taught a couple of hundred people over the course of the course, that came through the course. I did it for nearly 20 years. And then the other thing that I did once was I worked for the Prince's Trust, which is a organization that Prince Charles runs in the UK, where I would teach entrepreneurship to young people. And I wrote a presentation that was about 45 minutes long. And kids would come from their schools with their whole school. And they would, well, not the whole school, because it was normally the years of the kids that were soon to be leaving. So they were like 14, 15, 16. And they would come and we would do it in cinemas all over the country. I went to England, Scotland, Wales. The children would come and sit in cinemas. We were connected with a cinema chain. Fill the cinema. And with a projection, I would do a 45-minute presentation on what you want to be when you grow up. What could you do? How could you live a good life using your inherent skills rather than stuff that you've been taught at school? Maybe you've already got skills. Maybe you're an artist or a painter. Maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you already do something. Why shouldn't that be your profession? Because of course, if you do something for a living that is part of you, then you'll never work a day in your life. And I love that. I must have done that presentation to, maybe a couple of 100,000 kids. I did it for a couple of years. Every day. We would do two shows a day. And every day we'd go to a different town. And we would travel all around. Some of the darkest places I've ever been to. Right up northern Scotland. Freezing, and these children would all be bussed in, on a coach. And they'd pile into the cinema, not knowing what they were going to see. And I loved it. I actually made, I'll send you, Carla, I made a video once. Because I stayed in travel-ins. There was no budget, so I stayed in travel-ins, which is like a day's in. And every day I was in a different travel-in. But the thing is, every one of these motels was exactly the same. The room layout was the same. The tea and coffee equipment was the same. Everything was the same. So I would wake up and I wouldn't know where I was. I'd have no idea, where am I today? So I made a little video diary of this. I'll send it to you, Carla. It's kind of fun. of me, however many years ago it was. I've always really enjoyed teaching. I even enjoyed doing homeschool with my daughter. You know, the idea of because I'm patient. I have a lot of patience. I'm not somebody I don't get flustered. And I think that's the secret to teaching. I used to teach people how to use computers, elderly people as well. That was another thing I did on the side, a little side hustle. Teaching old people how to use their Mac. And you can't do that and be like, oh, come on. you just, exactly. You just have to say nothing. It's important to position yourself slightly behind the person when they're doing this, so you can do this to yourself. My favorite thing would be when they'd have the mouse upside down. So up would be down and down would be up. And they'd be like, it's not working. You've got the mouse upside down. Yeah, mice are really difficult for people who don't know. Weirdly, we're talking about mice today. When I came into the studio this morning, my mouse the battery is dead, so I've got it over there charging. So I'm without mouse today. I'm having to use the trackpad, which I don't enjoy. And and here we are talking about mices. What is the plural of mices? Of meese? Is it meese? Macei? Mycellus? Oh, it's mouses. It's mouses. That's what it is. Mouses. Mouses is. Moose. Also on the front of the Dayton Daily News this morning, abortion reversal bill debated in Ohio House. It says a bill in the Ohio House would require doctors to give medical abortion patients information on abortion reversal. What? This is insane. House Bill 378 is sponsored by State Representative Carl Kohler, Republican of Springfield. It's aimed at women who opt for an abortion using the drug mifepristone, which blocks the hormone progesterone. Sponsors contend that a large dose of progesterone given soon after the other one can counteract the medication's effects, preventing an abortion. You do not screw with humans like this. You just don't treat humans like this. And this is men making policy announcements for women. Men shouldn't be allowed to make any abortion legislation. There should be a rule. Any abortion legislation must be written by women and voted on by women. Well, so be it. If women are going to be awful to other women, so be it. So be it. You will always have that in society. Not every woman is going to be for the legislation, I'm saying, but it shouldn't be for men to decide. I just don't think it should. Let the women fight it out. Democrats on the Ohio Health Committee, which held a first hearing on the bill on Tuesday, noted that studies of abortion reversal's effectiveness and the women's safety have generally been small, with results that were inconclusive or contradictory. We're threatening doctors with jail for not giving information that the government says is correct in the face of what other professional organizations say, says Representative Beth Liston, who is not only a Democratic representative, but a doctor herself. US hasn't verified Russian pullback claim. Putin says he'll rely on negotiations to halt bid of Ukraine to join NATO. I mean, this really is the fundamental thing that's really making Putin raise the stakes, isn't it? It's this membership of NATO. He keeps going back to this. He does not want Ukraine to join NATO. Now, Ukraine would join NATO at some point in the future, potentially, but not right now. And so maybe there's a way to word the diplomacy where it's like, we'll look at this again in the future. But you have to ask why Putin doesn't want them to join NATO. What's the reason? There's always a reason. Always a reason. Russian president said on Tuesday that he welcomed a security dialogue with the West as his military reported pulling back some of its troops near Ukraine. But US President Joe Biden said the US has not verified Russia's claim and that an invasion was still a distinct possibility. Chanel has joined us. Maggie has joined us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Chanel is in Tennessee. Hi, Chanel. Nice to know that you're listening. If you want to see us, if you've got an Echo show, you can see us on there. Just ask it to open Backchannel. Or you can go to YouTube and type in my name and Backchannel and it'll come up. There's my name there. Okay, let's carry on with the old newspapers. Dayton Daily News has got a lot on the front. Health staffing company accused of labour trafficking. Oi. A healthcare staffing company based in southwest Ohio is being sued by workers it recruited from the Philippines who are accusing the company of violating federal and state human trafficking laws. Fast-growing Health Carousel is headquartered in Cincinnati, has an Austin landing office, and in recent years has acquired other Dayton area staffing firms. While they have different brands that do different types of staffing, this suit focuses on their international recruitment. Interesting. Okay, that's Dayton. Let's move on. Pensacola. We're going to Florida now, and Ron DeSantis land. Solar companies worried bill will shut them down. No surprise. It says Northwest Florida solar companies are worried they'll soon be turning off the lights on their businesses if a new net metering bill before the Florida legislature becomes law. The CEO of Mercari Solar moved to Pensacola to start his business more than 4 years ago and now has more than 360 direct employees across Florida and another 300 contracted salespeople, all in the business of putting solar panels on the roofs of people's homes. He said, we've expanded over the state of Florida. It's been quite successful. It's done really well. Obviously, it's a lot of work, but it's gone very well. Floridians definitely like solar. Who says that? That people like solar? What kind of a phrase is that anyway? What kind of a phrase is that? Oh, yeah, I really like solar. You need solar. Solar is essential. Oh, I really like it. The cost of solar panels has come down in recent years. Florida's regulations surrounding net metering have made it financially feasible for many people to begin installing them on their homes. Net metering allows people with solar panels to sell back excess energy they generate to the electricity utility provider. However, a controversial bill making its way through the Florida legislature would lower the price utility companies are required to pay net metering customers to an avoided costs rate determined by the Florida Public Service Commission. Solar advocates say the change kills the growth the solar industry in Florida has seen over the last few years. Well, of course it will. And this is what Ron DeSantis wants, because he said that climate change is a Democrat thing. I think he said it's Democrat stuff. They don't want people to have free energy. They want people to pay through the nose via the energy companies. Kathy, welcome to Backchannel. We're just looking through the newspapers. We're on the Pensacola News Journal at the moment, and I'm slagging off Ron DeSantis. And here's a nice piece of propaganda. Governor Ron DeSantis leads his potential Democratic challengers in a new survey that puts his overall job approval rating at 53% and 50% with Hispanics, a strong showing for a Florida Republican with a key demographic. Yes, white supremacists. Among the three Democrats vying to take on DeSantis, Congressman Charlie Crist has the most support in the Democratic primary, according to Mason-Dixon poll, which found 44% of Florida Democrats back Crist, while 27% back Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried, and 26% support State Senator Annette Taddeo. A significant number of Democrats, 26%, are undecided. DeSantis. he reminds me a bit of Joe Manchin, in as much as neither of them have much of an intellect. Like, they can't really talk. Like, they don't really have the capacity to engage in conversations. They can repeat one-liners that they've heard Donald Trump say, or, other things, but they don't actually have the capacity to engage in conversation. They can agree and disagree. They can go, or no. Like, those are the skills they possess. But to actually take the conversation, and speak with thought, fluidity, consideration, to draw on memory, they don't have the capacity to do that. They also don't have vocabulary. That's the other way you can tell that people don't have much intellect. They don't have any vocabulary. When he speaks, he doesn't use many words. The same as Trump. The words are all like little words. Big and great and all these kind of inflatable words that start small. The survey indicates that each of the Democrats currently running for governor would struggle against DeSantis. He leads Crist in a head-to-head match with 51% support compared to 43% for the congressman and former Republican governor. Freed takes DeSantis by 11 percentage points, while Tadeo trails by 16 points. The polling memo says DeSantis has a decent cushion over the Democratic rivals right now. Yeah, I mean, DeSantis is going to do fine. Well, he'll always do fine in Florida because people think he's wonderful, because he's a racist, and they like racists. They connect with him because common ground. Yeah, I'm aware of his education, but it doesn't seem to translate into his language. It doesn't seem to translate into his intellect. Well, there is a group of people that say that he actually used Donald Trump, like he knew exactly what he was doing when he used Donald Trump to kind of raise him up. He played Donald Trump, like he played a very good hand, because now he's not really into Trump as much. Because now he's become the celebrity, and DeSantis is in office and Trump's not in office. So yeah, you could say that DeSantis has used all of his education to manipulate Floridians, to propagandize his offering. Maybe the guy's a genius, just he's evil. Evil genius. Those two words are often used together. I never understood why Hispanics were so keen to support Trump and DeSantis, though. Former President Trump's strong performance with Hispanic voters, particularly in Miami-Dade County in 2020, helped boost his margin of victory in Florida. DeSantis will be hard to beat it if he can replicate Trump's performance with Hispanics. I mean, how can Trump refer to Mexicans as rapists and criminals and build a wall at the southern border and separate children from their parents and have all of these archaic immigration policies, and yet Hispanics are still like, yeah, we love Trump? Like, maybe Hispanics are racist as well. I mean, this is it. It takes all sorts and all types. Everyone's a variable, and, I believe that politics is nuanced. It's not black and white. Okay. Florida Times Union. Where do we get to? Yeah. Well, the Hispanic vote is a very interesting vote because they're quite nationalistic, I think, Hispanics, and I think that they also are keen to assimilate. So they move to a new country and they want to kind of take on the characteristics of that country and be like, well, if the country's become increasingly right-wing, then if we join in with that, then we're more likely to assimilate. The Florida Times Union this morning leads with sheriff not responding to eye care. This is a local group of ministers and faith leaders who've tried since August to meet with the Jacksonville sheriff, Mike Williams, to discuss an adult civil citation program for lesser nonviolent offenses. offences tried the personal touch this week, but iCare, the Interfaith Coalition for Action, Reconciliation and Empowerment, made up of hundreds of members of the city's faith community, got no further than the sheriff's office's front door. 27 leaders and members of iCare, a non-profit group working to address citywide concerns on issues of justice and fairness, took their request to the sheriff's office public entrance at 3 p.m. on Monday. The Reverend Tan Moss, co-president of iCare, asked security officers at the entrance if he could give 200 letters of support for adult civil citations to the sheriff, and he was told he was not in. He was told to call the sheriff's aides to schedule an appointment. Repeated calls went to voicemail. I mean, this is just jokes. This is the problem of having these, small police forces, is that no one is accountable. I've called this number 10 times in the past 5 to 6 months and I've not received any return calls, Moss said in one message to the aide. If you get this message, if you can come down so we can converse with you, then hopefully we can call the sheriff and put a date in the calendar. Nothing. What's the problem? The sheriff is white. The Reverend Tan Moss is black. The movement has, an increasing number of ethnic minority representations or representatives in it. I think there's a fear amongst law enforcement, American law enforcement, that this whiteness is being undermined with black ideas, non-white ideas. And I think there is just fear of engagement. And it makes me very sad. Also on the front of the paper, abortions on uptick as Florida mulls ban. It says as Republican legislators in Florida moved two separate bills through the House and Senate that would ban abortions after 15 weeks, with no exceptions for rape and incest. Local and statewide abortion rights activists and clinics are concerned what this could mean for the women of Northeast Florida. The ban laid out in House Bill 5 and Senate Bill 146 is modeled after a similar ban in Mississippi that currently awaits its fate in the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which allows abortions up to 24 weeks. Breath of fresh air in Atlantic Beach as pairs bring old motel back to life. This is a nice story from Atlantic Beach. A couple of childhood friends from the beaches are just about done renovating a 1946 motor court motel on Atlantic Boulevard, aiming to appeal to nostalgia while providing modern amenities. Most people who walk on the property now say, "Man, I feel like I'm in the Florida Keys. I feel like I'm on my vacation from when I was a child," said Kurt DeWitt, co-owner of the Salt Air Inn and Suites. I say, yeah, that's kind of what we were going for. And it looks lovely. It's two one-story buildings painted light blue that face each other with a pool in the middle where there was once a motel-style drive-up parking. The owners wanted nostalgia while providing modern amenities. I mean, I love these types of little motels. I've stayed in dozens of them across the US when I've traveled. And one of the best ones I stayed in was called the Joshua Tree Inn. And I stayed in the room where the legendary singer Graham Parsons famously died. So I highly recommend the Joshua Tree Inn. And if you know the story of Graham Parsons, it's a fascinating story. I think he died of a drug overdose. And he was carried back to this hotel room, which is the room that I stayed in. But Graham Parsons hasn't had a huge impact outside of America, but many Americans hold him in great high regard. He was one of these super talented musicians that died very young. I wonder if he was 27. Isn't that the age at which all these people seem to die? The 27 Club, Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse and all of these characters? Hendrix, DeSantis. Yeah. Anyway, I recommend you look up the Joshua Tree Inn, because it's in Joshua Tree, obviously, which is kind of the desert, and it's amazing. It's in the California desert. All right, where are we going to now? The Tallahassee Democrat. They lead with Seeing Red, how Governor DeSantis is trying to turn Tallahassee Republican, and how Democrats are fighting back. Yes. The Republican governor of Florida wants to paint Tallahassee red, and despite opposition from local voters, the legislature, and the Florida Supreme Court, he said he's not backing down. The Supreme Court rejected Governor Ron DeSantis' request for an opinion on whether the 5th Congressional District, one of Tallahassee's 2 seats that is drawn as a minority access district, is required by the U.S. and Florida constitutions. Last week, the justices declined to weigh in while lawmakers are drawing new boundaries for the state's legislative and congressional districts. But Friday, DeSantis said he would not be signing any congressional map that has an unconstitutional gerrymander in it. That sets up a showdown with lawmakers, with both the House and Senate working on maps that leave CD5 largely intact. The Senate has passed its version. Mickey's joined us. Hello, Mickey. Welcome. First time on the show from Florida. And here we are discussing your friend, Ron DeSantis. Also, mail-in vote changes would add envelopes and ID numbers. It says Republican legislative leaders for the second year in a row are targeting mail-in voters, this time with a proposal one supervisor of elections called a recipe for disaster. The House and Senate this month began moving forward with a far-reaching measure. Doesn't say, because it continues on page 5, so it doesn't say the rest. I'm just guessing what it might be, but I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want to be inaccurate. And more coverage of DeSantis having strong showing with Hispanics in a new poll. It says he leads his potential Democratic challengers in a new survey that puts his overall job approval rating at 53 and 50% with Hispanics, a strong showing for a Florida Republican with key demographic. I mean, the thing is, I don't think that Ron's actually done anything. You know, if you voted for Ron and you're a fan of Ron, like, what do you say Ron has done that is good for Florida? Like, what has he done? Because all I can see that he's done is make a stream of racist policies. Chris has joined us from North Carolina. Hi, Chris. Welcome to Backchannel. It's 10:31 here in California. It's 1:31 Eastern. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, we're going to go to the Press and Sun Bulletin now for New York. They lead with this: all could have been prevented. And this is a story of a teen's near-death changes parents' minds on vaccination. Jeffrey Thomas was strong, healthy, a football player. If you envision robust, you'll see Jeffrey Thomas. And all his parents could do was watch him lying in an intensive care unit and promise themselves they'll do what they could to prevent what's happened to Thomas from happening to others. Now they encourage hesitant parents to vaccinate their kids against COVID-19, which is what landed Thomas in a hospital. I mean, the tragedy of this, the saddest part of this story for me, is that these people don't know anything. Like, they really are relying on media giving them the information about what is true and what is false, and unfortunately their access to this media is skewed. And tragically, if they're getting their news from Facebook and this whole kind of Robert Kennedy Jr. thing kind of filters into their feed, then they're going to make a crazy decision. And I feel really sorry for them, because they wish they'd got their son vaccinated. It's just a vaccine. There's nothing crazy about it. It literally wears off. It wears off. It's not like you're having plastic surgery and your face is being remade and you'll be like, oh, do you know something? I would really like to have my old face back. It's not like losing a leg and needing to wear a prosthetic and mourning the loss of your right foot. It's just a vaccine. It literally just is inside you and it helps you fight the coronavirus. And then it wears off. And if you choose to, you could have a booster or another vaccine, if you choose. But just try the first one. What are you afraid of? Side effects? There are no side effects. There's literally a little bit of a sore arm at the point of entry, which is normal. It's no different to someone, a child giving you a little punch in the arm. I get those all the time from my boy. And then you feel a little bit woozy for a couple of hours, like you do with all vaccines. I mean, the conspiracy theories now have become so prevalent that people think that these opinions are factual and they are not based on any fact. There are no facts supporting any of the anti-vax movement's arguments. None. And the biggest question I hear is, well, it's a new vaccine. Can you trust it? It's new. It's not been tested. That's the biggest argument I hear. And it's false. mRNA technology has been around for 20 years. And the testing of this vaccine was done exactly the same as it's done for any other vaccine. It was just done quicker. They tested the same number of people, but normally it's done over a period of a decade. And because there was this impending worldwide pandemic, they shortened it. And the authorization, which normally takes years, was done quicker. It was given emergency use authorization. There is nothing wrong with these vaccines. I've had 3 of them now. All Moderna. I had Moderna 3 times. 2 big doses and then 1 small dose. My family have had Pfizer. My family have had AstraZeneca. Carla, what do you have? What flavor did you get? Pfizer. Yeah. So Pfizer and Moderna are the RNA vaccine, messenger RNA. Look it up. Read about it. Do your research. Go to the CDC's website. They'll explain everything. It's not a bioweapon invented by Dr. Fauci to reprogram you to vote Democrat. That's what a lot of people say. That's what they say. Look it up. They say it's a bioweapon. They say it was predicted. They have texts that they go back to showing that this was predicted. And it's all linked to Hillary Clinton's emails and all the... There's this huge conspiracy. This is the world that we're living in now, where people have lost touch with reality, where my reality and someone else's reality can be 2 completely different things, where you can literally see no common ground. And Republicans have failed to support the messaging. Republicans have failed their constituents, the people that they represent. They have failed. They could have nipped this in the bud right at the beginning. But because Donald Trump said that the coronavirus was the Democrats' new hoax, it created an entire movement of people who knew in their heart of hearts, because their president had told them so, that this was just a little thing that was going to go away, wasn't necessary to get vaccinated, let alone when he started talking about drinking bleach and using a light on the inside that somehow you can knock it out. The guy said these things out loud. It's just tragic. Anyway. Mickey says you're hilarious. Thank you. Appreciate that. Take that as a huge compliment. It's very hard to be hilarious, especially at this hour of the morning. Should we go to the New York Times now? I think we should. They lead this morning with a fantastic photograph of children taking speed skating lessons in Beijing. President Xi Jinping has made sporting success a pillar of the Chinese dream. Families settle gunmaker suit for $73 million. Yeah, this is a very interesting story, which was in 5-Minute News today. The families of 9 Sandy Hook school shooting victims settled a lawsuit for $73 million on Tuesday against the maker of the AR-15 style rifle used in the massacre, in which is believed to be the largest payout by a gun manufacturer in a mass shooting case. And we've talked about gun control in this show, and we will continue to talk about gun control, because whilst I believe that it is right that Americans should be entitled to defend themselves with a well-stocked militia, I do not believe that a semi-automatic weapon is what the Founding Fathers meant when they wrote this. any military weapons should not be in the hands of civilians. They just shouldn't. The agreement is a significant setback to the firearms industry because the lawsuit worked around the federal law protecting gun companies from litigation by arguing that the manufacturer's marketing of the weapon had violated Connecticut consumer law. The families argued that Remington, the gun maker, promoted sales of the weapon that appealed to troubled men like the killer, who stormed into Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut on the 14th of December 2012, killing 12 first graders and 6 adults. The lawsuit was filed by relatives of the 5 of the children and 4 of the adults. I mean, think about this for a second. If gun makers are held responsible for mass shootings, and they are constantly sued, because this is going to set a legal precedent now, isn't it? So you're going to end up with gun makers being like, well, is it worth it? Or they'll be changing their marketing. Something will happen as a result of this. It can only be for good. Putin offering troop pullback and diplomacy is the headline. It says, Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that Russia would partially pull back troops deployed near Ukraine and was seeking a diplomatic path to resolving a tense standoff with the West, while President Biden welcomed further negotiations, but warned that a Russian invasion remains very much a possibility. I mean, Biden does not trust him. If it was Trump still the president, Trump would be like, Mr. Putin's a friend of mine. He said it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I don't know what you're worried about. Just drink a little bleach. That's what you'll do. I mean, people don't seem to understand that how much of this Ukrainian disaster right now is as a result of Donald Trump's tenure. His perfect phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky, asking him to investigate Hunter Biden. I mean, it's like, really? Really? China projects power on rink and ski slope, it says, in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou, which has sweltering temperatures for much of the year. Children are ditching their flip-flops for skis and hitting the indoor slopes. Out west, high up on the Tibetan plateau, Qinghai province has come an unlikely centre for curling, the traditional Scottish sport known as ice cattle in Chinese. Isn't that interesting? It says over in the northeastern province of Liaoning, a group of retired men gather every day in the winter to strap on helmets and hockey pads and face off on an outdoor ice rink. Such scenes, once rare, are growing more common as the ruling Communist Party charges ahead with an ambitious campaign to transform China. Large parts have never seen a single flake of natural snow into a global winter sporting power. There it is. Also, stark transformation from Ohio moderate to Trump's number one ally. This is a story about the fall of 2016. Trump's presidential campaign was pressuring Ohio's young state treasurer, Josh Mandel, to step it up. A former Marine, he held some sway with Republican voters and Trump aides, wanting him doing more public events. But Mr. Mandel couldn't quite find the time. He just had so many scheduling conflicts. He joked over breakfast with Matt Cox, a Republican lobbyist, and at the time a friend, Mr. Cox, recalled Mr. Mandel rattling off the excuses he used to avoid being too closely linked to a candidate he wasn't sold on, running after his 3 children, other political commitments, his observance of all those Jewish holidays. Once Mr. Trump won, any reluctance from Mr. Mandel fell away fast, and within weeks, he spoke at the president-elect's first victory rally, slamming those who were avoiding Trump during the election. And 5 days after the rally, he launched his second bid for the Senate, borrowing Mr. Trump's catchphrases of a rigged system. I mean, this is the problem, is that Trump is so powerful, that all of these potential congressmen and senators, they fear getting on the wrong side of Trump because Trump will humiliate them. Let's talk about P.J. O'Rourke right now, because he was the best-selling American satirist and columnist and political commentator who's died at the age of 74. We wanted to mention him. I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about him. He defied the leftward trend of American humor, particularly the gonzo style of irreverent journalism popularized by writers like Hunter S. Thompson, by offering a more conservative but equally cutting and iconoclastic critique of the nation's culture and politics. He wrote over 20 books, including 2 bestsellers, Parliament of Whores and Give War a Chance. A member of the baby boom generation, he first debuted on the national stage as editor of the storied humor magazine National Lampoon in 1970. He went on to work as a freelancer for Atlantic Monthly, Esquire and Vanity Fair, and serve as a foreign affairs desk chief for Rolling Stone. How many unsuspecting Bruce Springsteen fans have been sparred a life of brain-dead liberalism by his foreign dispatches and mockery of left-wing pieties, David Hosseini writes of O'Rourke in the Conservative National Review. O'Rourke's rapier wit frequently cut across the US political divide. Although he was a conservative with a libertarian bent, his humor was not solely the province of the right. One of his more memorable lines was that Democrats promise that government will make you smarter, taller, richer, and remove the crabgrass on your lawn, while Republicans say that government doesn't work, then get elected and prove it. He was a fellow at the conservative Cato Institute, but also a regular guest on the left-leaning MSNBC News Network and a panelist on the NPR faux game show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. He frequently criticized Democratic presidents, but in 2016 endorsed Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. His publisher Grove Atlantic said in a statement that O'Rourke, who died of complications from lung cancer, was one of the major voices of his generation. His insightful reporting, verbal acuity, and gift at writing laugh-out-loud prose were unparalleled, said the CEO Morgan Entrican. O'Rourke was born in Toledo, Ohio. He attended college at Miami University with a graduate degree in English from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Do you know, it's very interesting how some people can kind of cross a political divide with their humor. And I think that this is really the greatest skill, isn't it? Because, you know, we need to, whilst politics is very serious, I think you'll find that humor makes politics more accessible. And so the accessibility of politics makes more people engaged and more people feel activated. And so the only way to really do that, aside from like getting angry or climbing a crane or setting fire to a dumpster, is to use your creativity and is to think beyond what traditional protests might look like. Let's look at some of his quotes, because there's quite a few to get through. He said, "Seriousness is stupidity sent to college." That's a good one. "Predicting innovation is something of a self-cancelling exercise. The most probable innovations are probably the least innovative." He says, "Because of their size, parents may be difficult to discipline properly." I like that. "And popular culture is becoming gorged, broadening and thickening until it's the only culture anyone notices." That chimes with me, because I have worked very hard to avoid popular culture. Like, I really have repelled against it. And I've argued over the years with bosses when I've worked in the news, and they've said, you know, you need to cover this story. And I'm like, I can't cover that story. It's not news. That's someone's personal business. And I had this argument about when Guy Ritchie and Madonna split up. And I argued with them. They were like, you need to announce this on the radio. And I said, why? It's nobody's business. Why do people need to know that two people have their marriage has broken down? Why is that necessary? And they said, well, you have to. It's like, why? I'm not doing it. Get someone else to do it. So what they ended up doing was getting someone to come on my show, and a show business reporter, to announce it. And I was very critical of it. It's no one's business. A marriage, a separation, it's just nobody's business. Mind your own business. Now, if Guy Ritchie's got a new film coming out and there's something in it that is thought-provoking and interesting and you want to talk about it, then that's great because the guy's a director and so he puts himself out there as a director. That's what he does. So we celebrate his talent and his creativity and his writing and his, And if Madonna has a new song out or an album or she's doing some kind of activism that we need to mention, then fine. But two private people who split up, they never got married in public, so why should they get divorced in public? I've never understood it. And more importantly, I just don't care. Like, if I spent any time thinking about every celebrity's marriage, I don't know who's married to who. I don't know who George Clooney is dating. I can't even say his name. I don't know who Scarlett Johansson is married to. I don't care. I have no idea who J-Lo is dating. Who is Jennifer Lopez dating? Ben Affleck. Jennifer Lopez is dating Ben Affleck. Who knew? Who cares? Who cares? Literally, I mean, I can't even waste any moments of my life thinking about it because I don't know them. If I met them, if I was friends with them, then their personal life might be of interest to me because I'd be like, oh yeah, some friends of mine, Ben and Jennifer, they're having a tough time at the moment. I might think about it, but I don't know them. Never met them. Why do we feel like the people that we have never met are like we are so close to them? Why is it that we take on these celebrities' problems like they're our own? I'll tell you why. It's because it makes our own seem a little less difficult to deal with. Because we're sharing in the fact that somebody else is going through the similar things that we are. And if it's happening, if Madonna and Guy have split up, then maybe, if they can get through it, maybe we can too. It gives us empathy. Sympathy. Sanya has joined us. Hi, Sanya. G has joined us. Lisa, Aidan, Trisha, Chris. Welcome. Let's look at a few more of these quotes from PJ O'Rourke. The young are adept at learning, but even more adept at avoiding it. There's one more terrifying fact about old people. I'm going to become one soon, he says. And everything that's fun in life is dangerous. There we go. Wonderful. I do want to spend the last couple of minutes just mentioning this story because of Black History Month. We like to celebrate and commemorate somebody in history. And this is somebody who was born in 1744, died in 1829. Less than a year after Massachusetts adopted its state constitution, a woman no one had heard of did an extraordinary thing. Originally born Mum Bet, Elizabeth Freeman was enslaved, but she filed a legal challenge citing the document's promise of liberty and won her freedom in court. She became the first woman to successfully file a lawsuit for her right to freedom in the state of Massachusetts. This groundbreaking moment established a pathway for a host of subsequent suits and eventually prompted the Massachusetts Judicial Court to outlaw slavery altogether. And after earning her freedom, Brett changed her name to Elizabeth Freeman and worked as a paid domestic worker, midwife, healer, and nurse. Her efforts paid off, and she was eventually able to buy her own home. Isn't that amazing? I mean, who knew that if you were enslaved, you could even file a court case? I mean, that didn't occur to me, like the fact that she even had access to the court. She served as a judge on the Berkshire Court of Common Pleas. In January of 1773, he moderated the local committee that wrote the Sheffield Declaration. The Sheffield Declaration. This declaration was approved on the 12th of January 1773. It stated that mankind in a state of nature are equal, free, and independent of each other, and have a right to the undisturbed enjoyment of their lives, their liberty, and property. The same language was used in the United States Declaration of Independence of 1776 and in the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. Evidence suggests that Bett overheard these ideas when Colonel Ashley held events in his home, and when the documents were read aloud in public square. Seeking freedom, Bett turned to Theodore Sedgwick, a prominent attorney who helped draft the Sheffield Declaration with Colonel Ashley. Bet, along with an enslaved man named Brom, began the process of fighting for their freedom. Historians note that Sedgwick, along with many of the lawyers in the area, decided to use the case as a test case to determine if slavery was constitutional under the new Massachusetts Constitution. Amazing, isn't it? This is interesting. It said that she worked as a domestic worker in Sedgwick's house. And after 20 years, she was able to buy her own home where she lived with her children. Elizabeth Freeman died on the 28th of December, 1829. She was buried in the Sedgwick family plot in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. She's believed to have been 85 years old and is the only non-Sedgwick buried in the inner circle of the family plot. And that was because Sedgwick himself wanted for that to be the case. Interesting. Okay, thank you. What a pleasure. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock Pacific. Next, it's your pal Hal. Have a great day.